Good evening. Wherever you are tonight, whatever weight you may be carrying, let this story be a gentle place for you to rest. Close your eyes, take a slow breath, and come with me into the quiet. Tonight's story is called The Listening Forest. There is a forest, deep and wide, that appears on no map. It doesn't have a name, because no one ever needed one. It's simply there, stretching like a slow, endless sigh across hills and valleys, between rivers and forgotten paths. The people who live near its edges whisper stories about it. They say that the trees in that forest don't just grow, they listen. Every leaf, every root, every patch of moss is tuned to the soft murmurs of those who pass by. Not to judge, not to answer, but simply, to listen. One evening, a man found himself at the edge of that forest. He wasn't looking for it. In fact, he hadn't been looking for anything at all, only trying to escape the noise that had filled his days. He had lived for years wrapped tightly in schedules, deadlines, alarms, and constant demands. At some point, he realized he wasn't breathing deeply anymore. He wasn't really living, just rushing from one thing to the next. And so, without knowing exactly why, he had begun to walk. Away from the cities, away from the noise, until he found himself here, standing before a forest he didn't know. The sky was deepening into the soft velvet of twilight, and the trees before him swayed gently, as if sighing with relief to see him. Without thinking too hard, he stepped inside. The first thing he noticed was the quiet. Not the heavy, awkward silence of forgotten rooms. But a living quiet, like the hush of an audience before a beloved song begins. He walked. The ground beneath him was soft with fallen leaves, and the air was rich with the scent of earth and wood and something sweeter he couldn't quite name. With every step, he felt something unwinding inside him, like a too tight knot beginning to loosen. After a while, he heard it. At first, he thought it was just the sound of his own footsteps, or maybe the breeze teasing the branches above. But then he realized, it was an echo. Soft, distant, and yet strangely familiar. He stopped and listened carefully. Out of the hush came a fragment of sound, a whisper not from outside, but from somewhere deeper, a laugh he hadn't heard in years, light and unburdened. It was his own laugh, from a long-forgotten afternoon when life had felt easy and wide open. He took another step, and another. Each time, the forest answered, not with words, but with memories carried on the breeze. Moments of wonder, of hope, of simple joy. Times he had buried under layers of busyness and worry. The forest wasn't speaking. It was reminding. It was returning him to himself, one breath, one step, one quiet heartbeat at a time. As he moved deeper among the trees, he noticed the forest was changing too. The trees grew taller, older, wearing their years with dignity. Some leaned together in silent conversation, while others stood alone, vast and strong. The man found a small clearing, bathed in the silver-blue light of the rising moon. At its center stood a tree larger than any he had ever seen, its bark thick and knotted, its branches reaching out like open arms. He sat at its roots, feeling the ancient wood solid and warm against his back. He closed his eyes. And in the deep, breathing silence of the listening forest, he heard more echoes. Not just the bright moments this time, but the sorrow he had carried too long, the regrets he had tucked away, the dreams he had set aside. The forest listened to it all. It didn't rush him. It didn't ask him to explain. It simply made space, space wide enough for every part of him, light and heavy, joyful and aching. For the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't need to fix anything. He didn't need to achieve, impress, or defend. He could just be. Tears slipped down his face, not sharp or painful, but soft and freeing, like the first gentle rains after a long drought. The earth seemed to breathe beneath him. The stars blinked awake above. When he finally rose to his feet, the man felt different. Not fixed. Not finished. But lighter, like a door inside him had been opened, and fresh air was pouring in. He stayed one more night in the forest, curled beneath the great listening tree. And in the morning, he followed the soft winding path back to the edge of the woods. There was no farewell. No grand goodbye. The forest had never needed anything from him. It had given him exactly what he needed, the chance to hear his own voice again, the one he had almost forgotten. As he stepped back onto the open road, he carried that voice with him, nestled deep inside his chest. Not loud. Not shouting. Just there, steady, certain, alive. And if ever, in the days or years to come, the noise of the world grew too heavy again, he knew where he could return. To the place that asked nothing. The place that only listened. The listening forest. Thank you for joining tonight's story. May your dreams be soft, your heart light, and your spirit quietly renewed. Good night.